patience in running a little late at the beginning. And the organizers are going to give us a 5-minute notice till the end, so we'll be able to wrap up. And again, there's someone taping here. Do you want to announce that again?
Yeah, so if you ask a question and you don't want me to record it, I'm with Cable Community Radio, just let me know and I'll turn it off.
All right, so hi, welcome. This panel is called Revolutionizing Hope. And my name is Cindy, and this is Andre and Paul. And we are going to probably each speak for 10 or 15 minutes and then open it up and hopefully have a conversation. Can everyone sort of hear me so far? Okay. This is a hard room because you can't see everybody, so if people want to feel free to like circle the chairs or come closer. And Harjeet was going to be here and couldn't make it, so there's only 3 of us instead of 4 of us on the panel. There are names if you want. And before I get started, maybe we'll each say something about ourselves before we speak, as opposed to me introducing everybody. But this panel was also pulled together by the Institute for Anarchist Studies, and we have, I'll just pass out some flyers. If you don't want one, don't take one. And don't feel compelled. They went this way already. The Institute for Anarchist Studies is basically to encourage people who consider themselves in the anti-authoritarian, libertarian, horizontalist, anarchists, to think about the world in critical, strategic, theoretical ways, write about it, speak about it, do popular education. So if you're interested in any of those things, check us out, which is also why we're doing this panel. The Institute for Anarchist Studies is also a big advocate of not just critiquing the world, but thinking about the kind of world we would like to see in its place. And I also want to do a plug for Andre's book, Wobblies and Zapatistas. So I've been tabling upstairs for PM Press if you'd like a copy over the weekend, or you can grab one really quickly at the end of the panel. It's I read it, and it's a really lovely reminder of people doing incredible things to try to make the world a better place. Stop playing.
It's actually a study group.
Thank you.
Reading that book and meeting.
October 12th in Portland, study group, reading this book. Great. And I really do want to encourage at the end of this, when we're done, to try to make it more conversational than Q&A and bring out ideas, because what we wanted to encourage was for us to think, and I hope people do this all weekend, I'm going to be the first person, so I'll just start talking, is to think about how we can not just critique everything and be against everything, and because I actually think that most people get that the world's kind of messed up. I don't think we have to do a lot of convincing about that. I really don't. And we seem to spend most of our time doing that as if we're the ones that know that and other people don't. And I think we need to actually do the opposite. So Andre came up with the title, and I actually really love it because it really annoyed me during the Obama campaign that he basically used social movement language and used the words we should be using, and then it spoke to people. And I was like, why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we talking about hope and speaking to people as people who oppose capitalism and the state and hierarchy and things that Obama doesn't? He believes in hope, but he also believes in capitalism. One of his lovely talks, he actually said that, and I was like, whoa. One of his lovely, I believe, I believe, I believe. So what I want to talk about, my name again is Cindy Milstein. I'm with the Institute for Anarchist Studies, which is a volunteer project. And I also do writing. I'm working on my own little book this summer, slowly, about anarchism. And I generally write essays just to sort of intervene in trying to make anarchists and anarchism a smarter, stronger social milieu and movement that will actually live and achieve something. And I've been involved in a lot of anarchist projects, collectives, cafes, bookstores, things like that, organizing work. So I kind of want to do, I always like to do the big picture kind of thing, and I want to just think about how to think about maybe revolutionizing hope, and maybe as a framework for this weekend. And before I do that, it would really kind of be an interesting helpfulness to me if people could kind of just indicate generally, if you consider yourself anti-capitalist, anarchist, anything that's kind of on the side of wanting fundamental social transformation, if you could kind of, not to out everybody. Yay! Okay. The reason I want to do that actually is because I also don't want to assume that of everybody. So if that's not true, you don't feel bad. But it's always hard when you're speaking to know what you're saying. And I don't want to go into what I don't like about the world. So I want to assume at the beginning that people actually are looking for fundamental social transformation. But the reason I was excited about this panel, and I want to use this frame for the weekend, is it's really interesting to me that this weekend is so eclectic in terms of bringing together people from people that want to tinker with the way the world is right now, Democrats to progressives to Green parties to peace and justice activists to all sorts of ecological activists to radicals at this conference. And it's a really interesting difference to understand that shift between if we want to actually fundamentally transform the way society looks. So that's kind of the premise I want to start with. We want to get to the root of what the problems are, because oftentimes the things people look to fix the problems, we don't like global warming, so we're going to ask the state and people that are doing the large-scale warming of the climate to stop that are the very entities that are doing it, and we hope. I actually find a lot of people think anarchists are kooky because we're like asking for a world that can't be achieved or it's impossible or not pragmatic. But I actually think what's kooky is asking an entity that's doing something like destroying the economy of most people's lives, like capitalism or the state, asking that same entity to stop doing it seems to me an absurd task. Or asking the president, the institution of a president, to stop, to give people more democracy when that's the thing that is preventing us from having democracy. So I actually think we're the ones that have the common sense. We're saying, no, we want democracy, we're going to take it back. So I want to actually just frame maybe 4 or 5 categories of ways to think about revolutionizing hope in large, sort of overarching ways. The first is pretty particular to how, in general, anarchists or people around the world right now that are looking at sort of horizontalist or autonomous movements think about the world, is prefiguration and concentrating what we do on prefiguring the world we want to see. And prefigurative politics is basically a way of saying what we're doing now has to actually have kernels or glimpses of the world we want to see in the future. Because for me, revolution isn't a giant moment where we suddenly wake up or topple a castle or leap over a barricade and suddenly everything's good. But it's going to be the constant process for the rest of human history of how we are going to become better and better at making a more and more equitable, egalitarian, humane, just world. And so how we do that now is completely part of the revolutionizing hope of how we're practicing the world we want to live in and giving people an idea of the world we want to live in and illuminating what's wrong with the present world. And that's all a big task in everything we do. So how do we think about when we do anything from a protest to creating a community space, to doing conferences, to running a food program? How do we think about doing that in a way that illustrates a different form of social organization, different ways people relate to each other, which precisely gets at a critique of hierarchy, or a critique of capitalism, or a critique of the state. So how do we do that? And that involves all of us thinking really hard about the projects we do to show how we can show the glimmers of things, of difference in things. And that, in a sense, is what really I understand direct action to be. Is not just asking for things and demanding things of something other entity out there. Those of you who might have been watching recently, the folks in Pittsburgh who converged on Pittsburgh to protest the G20, from the very calm permitted marches to people's summits, to hanging banners over bridges, to people, students and anarchists and other people being, in the street when they weren't permitted, and then being tear gassed, to, all the things that happened in Pittsburgh. All of those things were a form of militancy or agitation or demands, but all of those were simply asking something of something else, saying, don't do this, we don't want you to do this. Even the most militant direct actions where people were, taking the streets in unpermitted ways, it's still sort of a reformist demand. It's like, we want the state to give us back our streets, or we want the world's leaders to let us have space. That's not what I'm talking about that I think is important about prefiguration and direct action.